Hello and welcome to this astrological forecast for the sign of Virgo for the year of 2025. I strongly recommend watching the video for your rising sign for the greatest accuracy, but you may also use these videos for your sun and or moon signs if you so desire. The first item I will call your attention to for 2025 is the fact that Pluto is now in Aquarius in your 6th house to stay for almost another 2 decades, deeply transforming your work, health, schedule, and day-to-day activities. Pluto has been back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius since March of 2023, but that transition period is now over, with 2025 being the first full year of Pluto in Aquarius. Other 6th house topics include food, employees, pets or animals, accidents or injuries, and sometimes even enemies. And so Pluto in Aquarius may unearth what is hidden in any or all of these areas for you in the years to come. Remember that this is a long, drawn-out process lasting for almost 20 years. In general, Pluto in Aquarius will transform everyone's relationship with technology, the collective, and the future. For you, Virgo, Pluto in Aquarius will also have a lasting impact on your communication, travel, or what is familiar to you. On February 23rd, Mars stations direct in Cancer in your 11th house of friends. This is part of an ongoing story that first began in September or October of 2024 and does not conclude until May or June of 2025, involving increased motivation and energy output in the area of your friends, groups, or allies, as well as your experience of loss or suffering and how these areas are connected. It may be necessary for you to rethink your motivations when it comes to groups and who your true friends are. While Mars direct station on February 23rd is significant, it is still only a turning point in a larger story. With Mars being opposite Pluto for so much of this time, your actions or motivations will continually be challenged to transform. While perhaps difficult, this is not something you should run from. Instead, utilize your Virgo skills of fine detail analysis and creating order out of chaos to meet what is required of you. In addition to being an experience of intense transformation, this transit will also have a lasting impact on your communication, travel, shared resources, or issues of life and death. On March 1st, Venus stations retrograde in Aries in your 8th house of shared resources. This too is part of an ongoing story, but one that does not begin until January of 2025 and does not end until May of 2025, involving the reflecting on and reconsideration of relationships when it comes to your shared resources, business, secrets, or issues of life and death. Venus, a planet already signifying relationships to begin with, then retrogrades back into Pisces in your 7th house of relationships on March 27th, making this particular Venus retrograde extra important when it comes to your major relationships. The exact Venus retrograde itself lasts from March 1st through April 12th, during which time the effects of it will be at their most intense. The fact that it is back and forth between your 7th and 8th houses emphasizes a connection between your relationships and shared resources. For further clarification, consider this. Venus has an 8-year synodic cycle, meaning it retrogrades through almost the exact same part of the zodiac every 8 years, and thus you can look back in your life to what happened in March and April of 2017 and know that those themes will tend to repeat in some way this year during this Venus retrograde. Past relationships can also occasionally resurface at this time. Venus retrogrades occur every year and a half, and they often function as significant stress tests on existing relationships. In addition to your money, values, or resources, this Venus retrograde will have a lasting impact on your beliefs or spirituality. The March madness continues when on March 14th, a lunar eclipse takes place in your sign of Virgo in your 1st house of self, indicating fateful developments having to do with you personally, your character, physical body, or even appearance. In fact, all of March is our first eclipse season this year, a time of increased chaos, upheaval, and uncertainty. With the lunar nodes recently having shifted into the Virgo-Pisces axis and thus your 1st and 7th house axis, you also begin experiencing fateful changes in your relationships at this time. Although to be precise, there was just barely a lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 17th, 2024, and so you may have already seen a preview of this around that time. This theme of major changes in yourself and your relationships will last for about another year and a half. The previous eclipse theme, having to do with your shared resources and issues of life and death, also finishes up for you in March, with the following solar eclipse on March 29th taking place in Aries in your 8th house. Put simply, the eclipse season in March of this year marks a shift of emphasis away from fateful changes having to do with your shared resources and towards fateful changes in your relationships. On June 9th, Jupiter ingresses into Cancer in your 11th house of friends, bringing growth, expansion, and good fortune to your friends, groups, or allies for the rest of the year, especially if you were born during the daytime. This may also magnify and make easier to manifest your hopes or wishes. You may notice in the chart on screen, however, that as Jupiter makes this ingress, It is square to Saturn in Aries in your 8th house, suggesting that the growth or good fortune you experience with your friends or allies creates ongoing stress with limitations in your shared resources. For example, becoming part of a larger group or organization could somehow limit the money you and someone important to you have available to spend. With Jupiter for you as Lord 7 and Saturn as Lord 6, friction between your love life and work life could also manifest. I wouldn't worry too much about this, however, as overall this is a very positive transit with Jupiter's exaltation in Cancer giving it great wherewithal and resources to handle the stress from Saturn. The best approach is to allow the growth in the area of your friends or allies to take place, but keep it in check with reasonable limitations. In addition to your home and major relationships, this transit will have a lasting impact on your fun, leisurely activities, work, and or health. On July 13th, Saturn stations retrograde conjunct Neptune in Aries in your 8th house of shared resources. This is a big deal. The ingress of slow-moving Saturn and even slower-moving Neptune into Aries this year is one of the key indicators that 2025 is a year of great change, unlike anything we have seen for many years prior. It is, however, still just a preview of things to come, with both Saturn and Neptune retrograding back into Pisces by the end of the year, and not being in Aries to stay until 2026. Specifically, Neptune will be in Aries from March 30th through October 22nd, during which time you will experience increased faith or idealism in your shared resources, business, or issues of life and death, though this may be tempered by the realism of Saturn when it too enters Aries on May 24th and remains there until September 1st, during which time you will experience greater order, discipline, and realism in your shared resources or issues of life and death. There may also be significant challenges, limitations, or obstacles in this area at this time, especially if you were born during the nighttime. When Saturn conjoins Neptune, you will find peace through acceptance, and you may also find yourself having to deal with confusing realities in your shared resources. Saturn will be within a 1-degree orb of Neptune from June 9th through August 4th, during which time the effects of the transit will be at their most intense. In addition to your major relationships, this transit will have a lasting impact on your fun, leisurely activities, work, and or health. On September 6th, Uranus stations retrograde in Gemini, trine Pluto in Aquarius. As with Saturn and Neptune, Uranus ingress into Gemini this year is another major indicator of 2025 being a year of great change. But also like Saturn and Neptune, it is only a preview of things to come, with Uranus retrograding back into Taurus by the end of the year and not being in Gemini to stay until 2026. Specifically, Uranus will be in Gemini and your 10th house of career from July 7th through November 7th, during which time you will experience the shaking up of your career, reputation, or social status. When Uranus trines Pluto, sudden liberation of repressed fear or desire takes place in your career, work, or health that ends up affecting your communication, travel, or what is familiar to you. Remember, however, that this is only a preview of things to come for the next 7 years. Uranus will be within a 1-degree orb of Pluto from August 11th through October 28th, during which time the effects of the transit will be at their most intense. Due to the sudden nature of Uranus, however, I would pay particular attention to September 5th, 6th, and 7th, the days immediately before, during, and after Uranus exact retrograde station. Speaking of September 7th, that is also the day of a lunar eclipse in Pisces in your 7th house of major relationships, indicating fateful changes in your relationships at this time. It also kicks off the main part of our second eclipse season this year, which technically begins on August 23rd and ends on September 28th. Again, this is a time when great and powerful changes beyond our control can and do take place. The following solar eclipse on September 21st takes place in your sign of Virgo in your 1st house of self, suggesting fateful changes to who you are personally. With the eclipses now bouncing back and forth between your 1st and 7th houses, the theme of relationships and self versus other is highly emphasized. Keep in mind that events signified by eclipses can occur on the exact date of an eclipse, between eclipses, or even between entire eclipse seasons. Eclipses are erratic and often unpredictable in this way. On November 4th, Mars in Sagittarius opposes Uranus in Gemini. While this in itself is not as long-lasting of an event as what I would typically include in a yearly context, its effects are so potent that it may very well end up defining the entire final quarter of the year, and thus I decided it needed to be included. With Mars in your 4th house opposite Uranus in your 10th house, a sudden challenge involving strong anger or desire for freedom in your home, family, or living situation, as well as your career or reputation takes place. It is as if your private life is being pitted against your public life. For example, a significant challenge or conflict in your home could cause disruptions in your career. This will then have a lasting effect on your communication, travel, work, health, or shared resources. You will be rethinking your motivations for your career or reputation for all of November and into December. More generally, when angry Mars opposes unpredictable Uranus, sudden fighting and rebellion can take place. And we will all see this manifest on an individual and collective level on or around November 4th. Remember in this context that anger does not mean you are doing anything wrong. It is simply an indicator of the need for a boundary. 2025 is a year of great change, and I am not just saying that. Astrologers like myself have had their eye on this year for at least half a decade now due to its powerful indicators of great change. It is not common at all that in one year we have Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all changing signs, with Pluto just having changed signs not long before the year began. For you, Virgo, deep changes and transformations in your work, health, schedule, or daily regimen have already begun with Pluto now in Aquarius. You experience increased effort and energy output having to do with your friends and allies, as well as your transcendence of suffering in the first half of the year due to the Mars retrograde. You reflect on your relationships in connection with your shared resources in March and April when Venus is retrograde. Eclipses shake things up throughout the year having to do with you personally as well as your major relationships, with the lunar nodes having shifted to the Virgo-Pisces axis. Growth and good fortune come your way in connection to your friends and allies from June onward when Jupiter ingresses into Cancer. You find peace through acceptance in your shared resources or issues of life and death this summer when Saturn conjoins Neptune in Aries. Sudden liberation of repressed fear or desire takes place in your work or career in early September when Uranus trines Pluto. Finally, your motivation for liberation in your home or reputation can be held back no longer when Mars opposes Uranus in early November. So I hope you have listened closely to all that I have here said, for 2025 is a year we will never, ever forget.